Good afternoon. This is the JP Dinnell podcast Q&A session. I am JP Dinnell, and as always, I have Lucas with me. What's up, buddy?
What's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
You like my Mike Mitchell wave that I do all of our YouTube exclusive Q&A sessions?
Yep, I love it.
Do you?
Yeah, I do.
Do you think Mike knows that I do that? Because I think he only listens. I don't think he watches on the YouTubes.
I don't know.
I don't either.
I guess we'll find out.
I know several of his. We could put it in that podcast, boys.
Yeah, podcast boys.
Little group that we've got going.
Yeah. What's up? What do you got?
We've got all kinds of stuff. The internet has been abuzz with the JP Dinnell podcast. So we've got seriously, we this last month we've hit a record. Thank you, Stephen. We've hit a record of new subscribers. We've had more interactions and impressions than we've ever had. It's been a really great month. Now, people are wanting to know, because as I say, the internet is abuzz. People are wanting to know a little bit more about JP Dinnell, the man. Yeah, we're getting fewer questions about like, oh, here's the leadership, and more like how you got so cute.
Well, that's a lie. Check. All right, what do you got?
So we're going to start with this one. Since you've started working at Echelon Front, a lot of people have gone back, listened to your episodes with Jocko that you've done.
Check.
Right? Particularly the first two, as those two seem to be the ones that, at least I feel like, there's the biggest difference in between those two. Because in the first
46
episode,
to 246.
Yeah. Not only are we looking at like a couple of years difference, but also Marco's Pizza JP to like CTO JP.
Yeah,
seem
close
like,
to it. Yeah.
So, what's been the biggest change at Echelon Front since you started personally, and then what's been the biggest change at Echelon Front since you started within the organization?
I would say the biggest change personally, since I started at Echelon Front, would be like self-awareness.
Okay.
To my leadership failures and shortcomings, because the more you talk about leadership, the more you teach leadership, the more you see it, and the more I'm able to recognize where I am failing and where I had failed in the past when I was thinking like, oh man, I was good to go. I was awesome.
Yeah.
So if you look at a numbers from a number standpoint of like what that financial company did when I was working there, we did awesome things. But then when I look at it from like the leadership aspects that we teach, I was instilling those principles, but not all the time. And I think back to that, I'm like, man, if I could do a redo, if I could have a redo, I would love to go back and just do things differently. So I would say the self-awareness of like my failures and my shortcomings has become very aware.
Do you think that those failures and shortcomings though, like led you to be able to be in the place that you're at right now? If I can use just like a paragraph of only infinitives. Yeah.
Sure. I would agree with that.
Like if you'd have been super successful at the financial company, you're probably not looking for the Echelon Front opportunity whenever it comes to you, right?
Well, maybe, but I left there when we were doing well.
Really?
I didn't leave the financial company because things were bad or trending in the wrong way.
Okay, I've never.
I don't know the story
of this departure. Yes,
and that would be a whole other episode that I'd love to dive into. But I left because I didn't have fulfillment anymore. Like I actually. The Cliff Notes version is I went and helped someone teach shooting to law enforcement, and I had more fulfillment in 2 days of teaching law enforcement shooting than I had in a very long time. Yeah. And Amanda and I at this time were trying to get our marriage back. Mm-hmm. And so I there's a lot of things that I was just like, I don't know I just didn't have that fulfillment.
Yeah.
And, I didn't have the mission. I talk about this at the muster sometimes of, just knowing your mission and knowing your why and why those things are important. And for me, I didn't have this deep sense of fulfillment anymore doing what I was doing. I was making good money. Yeah. But that complacency had crept in, and I think I felt like if I stayed there, it wouldn't have been a for me, it wouldn't have been a conducive environment to what I needed for Amanda and I to like fully get our marriage back where it needed to be.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I don't think I can explain that. It was just like this feeling that I had, and things just needed to shift and change at that time. And I mean, if you think about it, like if you're like look at it from a logical standpoint and like, hey, let's whiteboard this out. Okay, cool. You're trying to get your marriage back. You should quit your
financially stable
your
job.
Financially stable job.
Yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense.
And let's just add financial stress to a situation that could be volatile.
Yeah, like an already complicated situation.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can add one more wrinkle
Let's just
to
add
it.
one more thing. And so
Yikes.
it didn't make sense, but
Right.
to me it did. And when I expressed it to Amanda, she was all about it. And
Yeah.
so that's what put me in that really bad financial standpoint is when I left there and I was doing a lot of other odd end things, and I dropped the ball on a lot of things. I didn't have contracts in place. I thought handshake deals were good to go.
Yeah.
I, was very, like not wanting to step on other people's toes. Not stepping on people's toes is not the right way to say it. I was very I wasn't wanting to be super aggressive with these other opportunities that I had, which caused problems. Like if I would have been default aggressive and just taken the lead and boom, 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 I would have been good. But I had some like hesitation to do that on the business side, which is crazy. I don't know why. And that caused some things to fall apart. So it was like all these mistakes that I made that ultimately like put me in that situation where, I was, working at Marco's Pizza and going door to door,
Spray painting
addresses on curbs and doing work for my landlord to offset the rent and selling T-shirts at fight shows and sighting in people's rifles. So, I mean, I was doing anything and everything. And Amanda, has some things as well that she was, working on. And we were just like really, really tight. That was a situation I put us in 100%. And, but yeah, I left that. And so, again, the whole self-awareness, like I think back to those things and I'm like, man, if I would have just done this, it would have been different. I would have done this, it would have been different. So, I don't know other than just, I'm thankful for the situation that I'm in right now. But the self-awareness is like, it bothers me sometimes actually. Like when I look back and I think back to like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, man. Like I could have done things so much differently, but I know we can't play that game. Like if I was to be listening to myself talk in a coaching or leadership like consulting situation, I would literally tell myself like, okay, hey, you made these mistakes. You can't focus on the past. You can't do anything with the past other than learn from it. What are you going to take from it? And what are you going to apply moving forward? And so that's where I always bring myself back to it. It's like, okay, cool. Made these mistakes. What did I learn from it? What am I going to apply? And what can I do moving forward? And seeing those mistakes, I'm able to see them happen before they happen. Like I can see things start to develop in business and be like, oh, that's going to be a problem. This is going to be a problem. Here's some patterns. So, that's all.
So, like you say, looking back on it, you would tell yourself, or you would want to do things differently. And if you were talking to yourself in a leadership consulting situation, you would say, hey, you can't dwell on it.
Yeah, you can't.
But we still do. All of us do, right?
Yeah.
So how do we, in situations like that, how do we prevent ourselves from doing that long term? Or maybe a better way to put it is, how do we learn to take our own advice that we would obviously give to others of like, hey, don't dwell on it when we catch ourselves doing that? Because I almost think it's impossible not to, because I do the same thing.
Well, I think that's why self-assessments and reflection is important.
Yeah.
Like spending time just evaluating your strengths and your weaknesses, what's working, what's not working, put together a plan and execute the plan. It is that simple, and it can be that simple. Steve Ward and I talked about that today on today's Extreme Ownership thing. Cool. It was the session was about having the mindset of I get to do this.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that he said was like, hey, man, we all got a lot going on. And it's like, hey, make a plan or assess, make a plan and execute. I'm phrasing what he said. But, I mean, that's, I think, the simplest form to it is like, it takes time, do self-reflections, assess your personal and your professional life, your relationships, all the things that are important, the things that actually matter, that deliver impact and drive and push the needle in your life. You need to actually think about those things. You need to assess those things. You need to actually do a thorough evaluation of those things, and then figure out what you need to do to make corrections and or the things that you need to keep doing and then execute. And so when you look at it from that standpoint, it's just very simple. Effective and ineffective. Are these things effective? Yes or no? If they're effective, keep doing them. If they're not, what needs to change? Do an assessment, try it out. If that change works, then cool, keep doing that. If it doesn't, then try something new. Don't make big full commitments, make small iterative decisions.
Are you, like, when you're doing these kinds of things, for instance, at the muster, right, when you do the assessment, you're writing things down, right? You're checking boxes, you're writing things down. Are you this type of leader? Or, and ask you the question, and then there may be a little section further on where it kind of tells you to expand on it and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
How much of your process when you're coaching somebody, right, is to have them write stuff down whenever they're doing the assessments? And is that a more effective way? Like, do they need to write it down? Do they need to type it out whenever they're doing it to kind of get those thoughts into something else? Or do you think like internal processing is enough?
No, I think you should write it down. I mean, that's what, like when I'm doing workshops with clients, we have our PDFs already printed off, or and they're on site, and for a workshop when we're doing an evaluation and assessment, it's like, hey, which one of these things are out of balance? How does it affect and impact your ability to lead, or your ability to make decisions, or your ability to fill in the blank?
Sure.
What is one thing that you can change right now that'll make a positive difference? And then what's your action plan? And we make people write these things down. And the reason why is because when you write it down, it becomes real. But at the end of the day, these things are tools. Now, whether people use the tools or not, that's up to them.
Yeah.
Which is a cool thing, because it is up to you, 100% up to you. If you want to make the changes, you'll make the changes. And sometimes you got to find pain points that will drive you to make those changes.
Yep.
And sometimes you have to put self-imposed pain points in your life to drive those changes. So yeah. I did that recently, and it's been good.
Yeah, you look good.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I'm down. I was checking from last Sunday till today, which is Monday, down. What was it? I think it was. I'm trying to do the math in my head, but I took pictures. Let's go. It's like just over 13 pounds.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid.
It's sad.
You've almost lost as much weight as my wife has.
Well,
she's on a pretty accelerated weight loss program.
Yeah, she has a baby.
She lost. We went to the doctor today. She lost, I think, like 24 pounds.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
When I get down into the next range, I'll be happy. But then the next range is where I want to get and stay. I know I'm going to get there. It's like where I want to stay. That's where I want to live. And that will be my new ceiling, because where I got was not. I mean, it was like,
hey, bro, it's physics, man. Mass moves mass. So have some donuts and put up a big shoulder press.
Yeah. It's funny. I would agree with that statement for the most part. Yeah. However,
it's Newton.
Well, I'm going to counter this slightly. I was talking with Josh yesterday and his wife, because we were talking about just deficits and weight cuts and everything else like that. It's weird. If I was to lose 30 pounds, I don't lose any strength.
We'll see about that.
I've not once have I ever. When I make a massive cut, I don't ever, there's no noticeable difference in my weight, in the strength that I lose. Justin's noticed that. My old coaches noticed that as well. And I have everything documented from workouts and logs. Yeah. It's weird. So if I'm 215 or 245, there is zero benefit other than if I get on top. Let me rephrase that. The only benefit would be is if we're in jiu-jitsu and I'm on top of you, like holding you down in side control, that extra 30 pounds will play to my advantage. However, it quickly plays to my disadvantage when it comes to cardio.
Yeah.
Because I have to move that extra 30 pounds around.
That's true. I will say, though, like if you were doing a log press, you're going to miss that extra 30 pounds because that log needs to sit on that power belly before you get it
power
up.
Belly's going away, homie.
All right. So the second part of that question is, what's been the biggest change in Echelon Front? Right. Echelon Front started off kind of, as far as what I know and what most of our listeners know, or I guess our watchers, our audience, right? Because this is YouTube's exclusives. So
Crazy.
So what we've seen kind of from the outside looking in, or what we know of the company, Leif and Jocko started it.
Yep.
As a consultant company. They had a lot of success there. They write a book, Extreme Ownership. Things kind of start to pop off, and then they've had to hire some new people. You were the first one to help kind of expand that. We know about the muster. Most of us, I'm sure, are familiar with Jocko's podcast and things like the roll call, the Battlefield
review. They just got back from Gettysburg the other week.
Super cool, right? Yeah. So the Battlefield reviews, and then there are a few other things that are kind of here or there that they do, but we kind of only know about, like, all right, so this is kind of how the trajectory has gone. Obviously, the FTXs and that being your part of EF. But what do you think's been the biggest change since you started at Echelon Front? Is it the expansion of all these different programs, or is there something else that caused a shift that maybe we don't know about because we don't have this quote insider perspective that you have?
I would say it's personnel. Just bringing on additional people. The culture is still the same, but as you grow and as you expand, you're dealing with different personalities.
Right.
Good and bad. There's good and bad in every personality that we have on the team. Every one of us has great characteristics, and we all have bad characteristics. We know that. And so now you're just, it's a little more dynamic because now you're managing personalities.
Yeah.
And, the cool thing about managing personalities is if you can be simple, clear, and concise with your mission statement and, hey, here's what we do, here's why we do what we do, and you drive ownership to people, you're going to have a good culture. And we have a good culture at Echelon Front. So I would say the biggest change is obviously the expansion of the different departments, which requires more people, more personnel, more instructors, but also there's a lot of operation support that comes into that. And so with those additional personnels that you're bringing on board, it's just managing the culture. Yeah. And, the more you drive ownership and the more you have intentional conversations with your people, the easier it is to maintain that. And I think Echelon Front's done a really good job at it.
So I've got an organizational question for you.
Okay.
Because the leadership cadre at Echelon Front is so dynamic and so accomplished, but it's also a group that has been really, really tight, right? Because you went through SQT with Andrew Paul.
A small, but yes, sorry.
Yeah,
keep
right.
on.
So you went through SQT with Andrew Paul. You served in Ramadi with Jocko and Leif. Cody is your cousin. Josh is one of your really good friends. Jamie Cochran was kind of the first one who helped. Well, she really was. She was the one who she worked her way into a position just by busting her butt and doing the things that are outlined in y'all's sort of leadership or an organizational structure guide that you guys give to other people. Is it difficult to not silo because of the type of relationships that you have, right? So you've got your group of guys that you served with. You've got your other Navy SEAL brothers who maybe you didn't serve with, but are there. And so there's a certain bond and brotherhood there that somebody, for instance, like Rob Jones, who's a dynamic guy, he's a wonderful guy. I know we're going to have him on the podcast soon, that he's not a part of these two things. Like his Venn diagram only really hits you in the Echelon Front and military service. How do you shift in those dynamics? Because there are a lot of
also Corey Mize, Meg Miller, non-military, I mean,
absolutely, right?
You know, Meg Miller applied and got hired on as, you know, to help with the LDAP program. And Corey Mize used to work for a company that was in our LDAP program. And then she left and she had her own business, was doing her own thing. And then she reached out to Dave and then comes on board. And
yep, precisely. So like these
answer
things are things every company has to deal with.
Yes. And the answer is yes, it is easy to create silos. However, it's also easy to break down silos. We know what to do. So when those silos naturally occur, we're actively trying to break them down.
Right.
So as they're occurring, we're breaking them down. And now sometimes we get focused on our task at hand, and then all of a sudden you realize you're like, wait, this silo is bigger than it should be. There's an actual silo that's been developed. Well, what do we got to do to break it down? You focus on the relationship, focus on showing the other people that you care about them, asking, hey, what can we do to help you? And, you know, and also understanding that those silos that are there usually are larger in your mind than they actually are. And so when you can recognize and remember, hey, same team, same fight. We are all on the same team. We're doing this. We have the same purpose, the same intent. Then it helps break those down.
Yeah, I remember, and this will be a weird analogy because it's kind of apples to oranges. But when I was playing music, you had the record label who would want you to record your record, right? So this is before the advent of iTunes and all that, where we're like sending CDs out to people and making mixtapes for our high school girlfriends and all that stuff, right? So when you would go and so a record label hires you, you go to the studio, they're paying for the studio. So you have all of these different like interests. From the record label has their interest. Us as the band, we've got our interest in the songs that we want on the album or that we want to record. And sometimes the record label likes them and sometimes they don't because like, this is a really important song for me, but the record label listens to it and they're like, yeah, that's not, nobody's ever going to play that. But it's the, you know, the creative guy needs it because my feelings are attached to it, right? I've had a few of those, okay? And then you've got the studio execs that are the ones who are actually running the studio. They're the ones who are engineering, who are producing the album. And so you've got all of these people that are working on the same thing, but while we all want a really great product, we are at this place where all of our interests are different. The guys that are running the studio, if we get in an argument with the record company and we spend like, I don't know, an extra 20 hours in the studio, that's great for them because that's extra studio time that they got booked, right? They almost enjoy the back and forth and like, well, you know what? Why don't you just record this song if you want to, and then you can give it to them and see if they like it or not, right? Because that's they get paid. It's a transactional interest, right? But time. They know if they do that too much, now the record company's not going to want to hire them again because they're like, hey, you talked our guys into doing a bunch of stuff because you knew that they were young and dumb and that they had emotional attachment to this stuff. We're not paying for any of our artists to come back to your studio because of this. So
pigs get fat, hogs get slaughtered. That's what happens when you're greedy.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like when each one of these areas, right, we're all working towards the same thing, but we all have a little bit of like conflicting goal and mission. Ultimately, there's one group at the table, the record company, that they get to throw their weight around the most of anything. When somebody at the record company speaks, the rest of us are like, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's kind of apples to oranges, because there has to be some kind of dynamic in a company that like, these are the guys that get the final say. There is hierarchical structure because there has to be. If everything is, you know, a collective vote and that kind of stuff, then there really is no vision for where everything's going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? How do you maintain a healthy hierarchy and foster an environment where you really do see that it's one team, one mission, you know, team first, mission first, like you guys preach.
So I think you have to have this mindset of I don't care. You know, Jocko's talked about this before. Dave's talked about this before. Like at the end of the day, either you're getting the job done, you're winning, like that's what matters. And now your business, there will be some actual metrics associated to that. Like, you know, if you're winning, you know, if you're growing. And so as long as your metrics are improving, who cares? ultimately how it gets done. Now, you have your parameters as a leader that you set for your people. And this is part of like what leadership is. You're coaching people. You're teaching them how to think, not what to think. And you're teaching them, also how to think within the parameters that works for your organization. And so when I look at that from an organizational standpoint, like for me, for what I had for the FTXs is I got alignment with Jocko and Leif on what they wanted. And they gave me their commander's intent. That's what you're striving off of.
Yeah.
So if I was to back up what I was initially saying to this answer, I would start with that actually is like, hey, your commander's intent has to be very clear. It has to be very simple, clear, and concise. Your commander's intent also has to have, you have to be able to tie things to your commander's intent to know if you're actually winning. Are you actually getting the job done? Are you moving the needle forward? And that's what you have to be able to measure. And so then with me as a leader, I was able to receive the commander's intent from Jocko and Leif for what they wanted the outcome to look like from an FTX. Hey, we want to deliver hands-on training that's stress-induced, that's going to reiterate the leadership principles that we teach. Check. And they're like, hey, we've done airsoft, we've done paintball before, but however you want to do it, go ahead and get it done.
Yeah.
And so initially it was like, cool. And I was like, well, I don't like paintball because there's like legit safety risks to it. Paint's super messy. It takes away from the learning aspect if you're just covered in paint by the end of the day,
Or sore.
And, sore from getting shot up. Airsoft still has a safety risk, but you're not as dirty, not as sore as paintball.
Right.
It's the airsoft material, blah, blah, blah. And so Jocko and Leif were like, cool. And I remember Leif going, JP, this is your program. It does not matter to us.
Wow.
And then as we were building it out, we had a client that was like, we can't have any safety risk of projectiles. And we're like, all right. So then we started doing some research and we found these laser tag systems. So we went down that route. And when I went to Leif, I was like, hey, I found these laser tag systems, blah, blah, blah. This is what it's going to cost us to be able to do a pilot program to maybe get a contract. Leif's answer was like, cool, let me know who I need to write a check to. And I'm like, and this was not a small check.
Yeah.
At all.
Yeah. This was not a 3-figure check.
I know. It was not a 4-figure check.
Yeah.
And it was not I'll just say it was over $35,000 for us to get the proper gear to be able to do this program properly, for it to be safe with these good laser tag systems. Yeah. And this was just for a pilot. We didn't even have a contract. Nobody else really wanted to do. And, Leif was like, hey, if this is what you're telling me we need, then okay. Now, I was able to communicate back to Jocko and Leif why I felt we needed the gear. I was able to justify it through actual metrics. Hey, if we do this, it keeps people safe. This is going to be more appealing to a broader group of people. Airsoft and paintball is going to limit the types of clients that we get, the types of personnel that actually want to go through the training. From a safety standpoint, it makes it safer for us, so it lowers the risk, from somebody getting injured in training. Also, if we're doing laser tag systems, people don't have to wear those big old safety masks. And if they're not wearing a mask, they can actually properly communicate. And one of the things that we hit on hard is the ability to communicate. And so I was able to line out all these things, and they're like, cool, execute. Cool. And, we've been able to purchase more of those taggers a few times over the years. And so, it's just, when you set your commander's intent properly with your people and then give them the ability to make decisions within those parameters, it builds their knowledge, it builds their expertise and their confidence. And now it's to the point where, I have guys on the team that are helping put together plans for us to build our own training facility.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah. And it's pretty legit.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I know we're running close on time, but I got one more question for you that's kind of in the same vein. That's something I think that you guys do really well, and it's one of those things that I think a lot of organizations struggle with. And this is a question that I get a lot when it comes to leadership just in general, right? Because as a pastor, I'm the buck stops with me in a lot of areas whenever it comes to leadership within the church, and getting to work with a lot of community leaders in businesses and stuff. We all end up in the same place. When you look at the corporate structure of Echelon Front,
Yeah.
the guys who are at the top are a pretty intimidating group.
Yeah.
Right?
I guess so. Yeah.
But not just because of how confident you are. Y'all are all in great shape. You're all working hard. You're very masculine dudes. But on top of that, you add the Navy SEAL factor and the success that you had in the Battle of Ramadi and all of those kinds of things. Now to the average person, y'all now become like, if you were to threaten us, right? And here's what I mean. If you were to say, bro, I'm going to smack you if you do that again, right? I would buy it. Okay. And yet, like, if one of the guys that I was in a meeting with was like, bro, I'm going to take you outside, I'd be like, come on, let's do it. But if you say that,
I'll walk out first.
I'm going to be like, hey, give me a 10-minute head start, right? And I'm going to turn my phone off so you don't know where my location is, and we're going to check off. But within that, because there is that persona, there are nope, I'm running it over. There are a lot of companies and organizations where the people that are at the top, they lead by intimidation, where you guys have the potential to lead completely by intimidation, and you don't.
Yeah.
So if you're a leader that's struggling with that, or people have told you that, hey, you know what, you're pretty intimidating to talk to, or it's intimidating to bring stuff up in meetings, or nobody gives you any pushback on anything because they're intimidated, how do you correct that? Because I can't think of a more intimidating group of leaders than the guys that are at the top of EF, and yet it seems like everyone within your company structure feels that they have a voice in their area of responsibility and the opportunity to explain why they made decisions and stuff like that without fear of like dire consequences.
Well, we recognize at Echelon Front that intimidation doesn't work. Now, you might be able to get somebody to do something out of fear and intimidation, but that's a short-term tactical win, strategic loss, like major strategic loss. So we know that and we recognize it. And until somebody actually hears that, the likelihood of them recognizing that on their own is very small, because people do that because they think that's what good leadership looks like. They think of the fact that their dad did that, or their mom did that, or their aunt and uncle, or their grandparent, or a boss, that they thought was successful did those things. Like, hey, do it because I told you so. And you're like, okay, and that's a leadership failure that we as parents do. Because when your kids are like, hey, you're like, hey, I need you to go take out the trash, and they're like, why? You're like, because I told you so. Hey, why don't you not talk back and just do what I ask you to do? And the kids are going to be like, okay, I'm sorry. Dude, you are legitimately damaging your relationship with your kids.
Yeah.
Instead of like, it's like, hey, I need you to take out the trash. And the kid's like, why? Which I know for most people listening, they're like, well, the kid shouldn't ask why. They should just know that it needs to be done. I agree. They should. However, let's look at the relationship that you have. Mm-hmm. If you have a really good relationship with your kid, are they talking back?
Most of the time, no.
Yeah, exactly. Most of the time, no. And if they are, then there's something probably going on in their life that maybe you need to dig and be like, hey, is everything okay? Like, because if your kid is talking back and has an attitude with you and normally you have a really good relationship with them, something's going on.
Yeah.
There's your red flag waving on top of the hill saying, hey, mom, dad, come talk to me.
Yeah.
Like there's something going on. And, now it might be hormones or it might be that they're getting picked on at school, or maybe they're being sexually abused by somebody. I'm like, I know we're opening up some doors, but I'm saying these are real things that you need to think about. So let's have some empathy and realize that you didn't properly explain it. Now, if I was to ask my kid or say, hey, Aiden, I need you to take out the trash is overflowing, guess what Aiden's going to say? No problem.
Yeah.
I took away his reason to ask why. Hey, Aiden, I need you to take out the trash because it's overflowing. Or, hey, Aiden, I need you to take out the trash because A, B, and C. Like, it doesn't matter. Just
it's full.
It's full.
They're picking up the bins tomorrow.
Or picking up the bins
whatever.
tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or, you know what I mean? Like, you know, we just cleaned out the fridge and there's some rotten food in there. I would like it out of the house. He's going to say, yep. Like, his answer legitimately 100% of the time is going to be, okay. And so, like, me as a parent, I have to create a culture where people are comfortable having conversations and they're comfortable asking why. Because I also, like, if somebody asks me why, that is an indication to me that I did not give enough information.
Right.
It's on me to give the why. So, fear and intimidation does not work. Stop doing it. It's just not going to work. And I know what I just did. That was intentional. Stop using fear and intimidation.
But I think in this case it's effective.
Well, it's just one of those
We'll
things.
take the tactical
we
win.
We know, but we all know that fear and intimidation never works long
It's not
term.
sustainable. Yeah.
It's not sustainable. And you are, the only thing you're doing is legitimately ruining the relationships around you.
Yeah.
So just something to think about. Food for thought.
Yeah, for sure.
With that, we appreciate you guys listening. It's been awesome getting all the feedback and the stats of these YouTube Q&A exclusives.
Yeah.
We appreciate you guys that are subscribed to the podcast. We also appreciate you guys sharing it. We know when you guys screenshot it and share it on social media, it definitely helps us out. So we appreciate it. Keep dropping those questions. We will get to them. Hope you guys have a great week. Take care, y'all.